Oh, so look, of course, this sort of thing just shouldn't happen. There's no real excuse for it. Let's try and explore a bit of the why. So most of us, if we find ourselves wanting to turn around at a roundabout, understand truly that that is the right hand lane, and we need to keep aware of who's around us. In this instant, the person that wants to turn around is in the left lane and just decides to do so regardless of who's around them. And this can seem pretty strange to a lot of us. But it often comes with a very simple explanation. And if you truly understand this, it does make your driving a lot safer. And that is that your brain is only really capable of one conscious thought at a time. So when I take my students to driving test, the reason they're ready to go on a test is because they've reached unconscious competence. Now, that is a phase where you can do something without really thinking about it. So, for example, I can walk along the pavement and have a conversation on the phone because I don't need to think about walking, but it could be distracting. If you take, for example, the lorry driver recently who very nearly killed someone as he was driving along, he was trying to select a podcast on his phone, and that distraction caused him to not see a car on the hard shoulder. And you can see he's looking up, he just doesn't see it. And that is because his conscious thought is thinking about the podcast. And unfortunately, that means he's not really registering what he's actually seeing in front of him. So if you take this person on the roundabout, their conscious thought is, oh, I need to turn around, and unconsciously they're not competent at actually using a roundabout. So they decide to use the left lane, creep into the right hand lane with me approaching in the right hand lane, and then not really choosing a lane, continue further around the roundabout. Now you can always keep this sort of situation safe. Staggering, of course, as you see, I'm not getting alongside the blue car at any point, and I am anticipating someone from another lane actually moving across. That's a really important skill to do, because you just never know when it's going to happen. Two wrongs make the situation a collision. So if I'm putting myself alongside them, not anticipating them changing lanes, then yep, there's the collision. If I'm anticipating that, holding back like I do, there's actually no problem. I didn't use the horn or anything like that. I don't really feel the need to. Yes, they're making a mistake, but I'm going to crack on with my life. But if you get confused at a roundabout, make sure if you're in the left lane, you go somewhere safe for that lane. So if you're really unsure, just go left and find somewhere to turn around. If you're in the right hand lane, don't come round the roundabout and then try and cut across to a dangerous situation. Just go somewhere safe. You can always go all the way around if you really need to. But being aware that you can only really have one conscious thought at a time can affect your driving for the better. My pupils become aware of this as we drive. If I give a very simple example, I had a lad recently who passed, but I remember I wasn't allowing him to go to test. He was getting a bit frustrated with that, and he didn't really understand what I meant by the fact he hadn't yet achieved unconscious competence. He was still in conscious competence. And as we went across a roundabout, we were just going ahead. He kept in the left lane nicely. A lorry pulled out in front of him, very short notice, and he reacted well to the lorry. He slows down and then exits. And as he exits, he goes, oh, I didn't signal. Now, that is not the end of the world. Of course it's not. It's pretty obvious to most people what you're going to be doing. But he suddenly understood what conscious competence was. He said, that's conscious competence. He said I could react to the lorry, but I couldn't add the signal on because I can't think about it. And he suddenly got it. And then when he actually reached unconscious competence, he said, I can really feel the difference now. I can see further ahead. And that's because he's looking outside of the car. So this driver here should have been more aware of what's actually around them than where they're going to. Now, it fascinates me. It's what makes me think of incidents like this on the roundabout is actually an air crash, a disaster. I quite enjoy this sort of analogy, if you like. Aviation for me fascinates me. I worked in aviation in the military, but it's one of the safest forms of transport because the state safety standards are so much higher than any other form of transport, of course. Now, Eastern Airlines Flight 401, that was an American airliner many years ago that was landing in Florida, had 4 crew members, I believe. It might have been 3, but I think it was 4. And as they put the landing gear down, the nose wheel light did not go green. Now, it turned out it was a bulb that had gone, but all 3 crew members, or 4, however many it was, were absolutely fixated on this bulb, trying to work out, has the landing gear actually gone? It's night time, so they were struggling with it. It got to the point where the air crash investigation actually found that the captain probably turned around, like that. And as he did it, he nudged the control column, and that deactivated the autopilot that was holding them at 2,000 feet. So slowly the plane is now descending. No one noticed, not one crew member noticed that the plane was about to hit the ground until it almost did, and it was too late by that point, tragically. Is that distraction that your brain can have, and you need to absolutely be aware of it, because if you're doing things like concentrating on where you need to go but not how you get there safely, you can have real problems like potentially this person here. It's only me keeping them safe that stops that being a collision and a pretty nasty consequence. So simple point of this video is just be aware that you can have one conscious thought at a time. Let it change your driving. It's why mobile phones are so blooming dangerous. If you're sat there texting, that is your thought. And unfortunately, like the lorry driver, like the two young people within the last few years, they killed people on their mobile phones. And it is because they're not accepting that risk. That risk of that distraction stops me from concentrating on what's around me. So unlike Eastern Airlines 401, who forgot to fly the plane, never forget to drive the car. It is your biggest priority at all times, driving the car. Do that. It's very simply, you avoid a lot of problems. And hopefully, the more people become aware of how their brain operates, the road deaths could start to decline. Who knows? Ones like this, where people are killed by people on their phones, it just needs to disappear.